Apple Card is the perfect credit card for every purchase. It has cashback rewards unlike others. You earn unlimited daily cashback on every purchase, receive it daily, and can grow it at 4.15% annual percentage yield when you open a high-yield savings account. Apply for Apple Card in the Wallet app on iPhone and start earning and growing your daily cash with savings today. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings is available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility requirements. Savings accounts provided by Goldman Sachs Bank USA. Member FDIC. Terms apply.
Hello and welcome to Working Overtime, the advice-focused Triscuit under the aged fine cheddar that is working. I'm Isaac Butler.
And I'm June Thomas. Isaac, what have you got for us today?
Well, June, this week's Working Overtime is actually inspired by something you said in the last Working Overtime, which, to make a long story short, is about learning from, well, crap.
You don't mean literal crap, right?
No, June, I do not mean literal crap. I mean learning from bad art. Let's be honest, most art is bad, right? The rule of thumb is that maybe 1 in 10 works of art in a given field are good. Far, far fewer than that are great. So a lot of the time when we're reading, going to museums, watching movies, whatever, what we're actually going to wind up experiencing is art that isn't very good, that doesn't work, that is in some fundamental way in bad taste or just kind of sucks.
Isaac, I'm realizing that we might have different standards. I mean, other than when I was a professional critic who had to watch and write about shows whether I wanted to or not, the combination of like selecting things to experience based on my interests, my expertise, or the gatekeeping of arts institutions or publishers means that I feel like more than 7 or 8 things out of 10 that I read or see or watch or whatever meet the decent to good threshold. But let's not get lost in the weeds of ratings, because I know you want us to learn from that which is indisputably not great, right?
Yes, exactly. So, I was thinking, look, if you're going to encounter mediocre to bad work, whether it's 20% of the time or 90% of the time, you got to learn how to learn from it and how to take inspiration from it, not just at your rage at it, which can be inspiring, but let's talk about other forms of inspiration. Now, here is where you actually inspired me. You talked about having this experience a bit at the Edinburgh International Fringe Festival, where you saw a show that you just fucking couldn't stand. And you wound up finding the process of watching it, let's put it in your words, generative. Can you tell our listeners about that in case they missed that episode?
I sure can. So the first show that I saw at this year's Fringe was just awful. Like, just bad. Normally, I would have come out of that show and just ripped it to pieces. But there was something about the setting, the commitment to making art and the willingness to try things and the fact that the performers put themselves out there, it just made me want to just not do that. And I was still aware of all the flaws that the show had, but instead of focusing on them, I left that room thinking, okay, what would you do that would be better? What kind of show would you make on that topic? And it really was pretty generative.
Well, before we go any further, I just think it's worth pausing over some stuff you said there, because you had this experience kind of accidentally, but you could take those questions. Why isn't this working? How would I fix it? How would I make something completely different about the same idea? And if you can ask those questions intentionally, kind of keep them in mind, when you're like, oh, this is bad. Oh, right, I have these questions. It can lead to some really interesting places, I think.
Absolutely. One of the hardest parts of doing creative work is generating ideas. It doesn't work to just think of an idea on your to-do list. So responding to something that you've seen and taking it as a jumping off point and maybe figure out where it went wrong, how it could have been better, why it failed. That's great. That's hugely helpful. It's the basic building block from which you can create an entire idea mansion.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that idea swimming pool, an idea 3-car garage. Anyway, we'll have a lot more to say about learning from bad art after this.
Think of your favorite entrepreneur. They wouldn't be anywhere without trusted partners. So, if your commercial platform isn't converting potential customers into lifelong fans, try Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform revolutionizing millions of businesses worldwide. Whether you're a garage entrepreneur or IPO ready, Shopify's the only tool you need to start, run, and grow your business without the struggle. Shopify puts you in control of every sales channel. So whether you're selling satin sheets from Shopify's in-person POS system or offering organic olive oil on Shopify's all-in-one e-commerce platform, you're covered. And once you've reached your audience, Shopify has the internet's best converting checkout to help you turn them from browsers into buyers. Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way. This is Possibility, powered by Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/working, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/working to take your business to the next level today. Shopify.com/working.
At the end of your first year, Discover credit cards automatically double all the cash back you've earned. That's right, everything you earned doubled. All the cash back from eating at your favorite soup dumpling restaurant doubled. All the cash back from that trip where you sort of learned to snowboard also doubled. And the best part, you don't have to do anything ridiculous to get it. Nope, Discover does it automatically. Seriously though, see terms and check it out for yourself at discover.com/match.
Hey listeners, June Thomas here. Do you have any tips or questions about the creative process? If so, get in touch and share your advice or ask us your questions. You can email us at working@slate.com, or even better, you can call us and leave a message. That's 304-933-WORK. All right, now back to Working Overtime.
June, I missed you so much during that incredibly long break. I want to talk a bit about something I learned in graduate school that I think is really helpful here, whether a work of art is good or bad, which is descriptive criticism as opposed to prescriptive criticism. And what that means is trying to the best of your ability to describe the actual work of art in front of you as the inroad to critique. You don't just stop there, but it's like, how can you describe the thing in front of you? In particular, it's really helpful if you can sort of separate the terms or the purpose of a work, what is this work's overall project, from the execution. The first is about what's the subject matter, what's going on thematically, what is this work trying to do? And the execution is, of course, how does it go about doing it? Execution isn't just, was the acting good, was there subject-verb agreement? It's about all the kind of craft level decisions. Why is this painting in watercolor instead of oil? Why is this adaptation of Haruki Murakami's short story Sleep a musical, et cetera, and so forth? Does this make any sense to you?
It does. And I have to mention that one approach to criticism that just makes me angry, actually, is this book wasn't what I wanted it to be. So what? That's so irrelevant. You have to engage with a work of art on its own terms, but I think it can also be really, really useful to just consider the creator's most fundamental choices, and then ask if they work. But yeah, that's a great place to start.
And it's also worth saying that, those terms are open to critique, right? You have to consider it on its own terms, that those terms could be bad. It's totally possible those terms are bad. And then that's an interesting thing that's worth talking about. It can be really hard to figure out the terms of the work of art and what its project is. Like, that's a complicated, you have to be really open-minded kind of process. It can kind of be unpleasant when the work is bad, right? To be like, I'm going to just be really open to this thing that also is driving me crazy. How do you practice the habit of mind of getting curious at the exact moment when you actually feel judgmental?
Oh, I wish I could say that I always absolutely ace this test. It can be fun to revel in a work's failings.
Sure.
The truth is that harsh reviews are the most popular ones. And we all like to read things to filth from time to time, at least among friends. But I do try to get something from everything I read or watch or whatever. That might be entertainment, enlightenment, information. And if I don't get those things, I can at least get insights. into what was wrong with it, right? Our time is precious. I really value my time. So if I see something that is bad or almost worse, boring,
Definitely
I at
worse.
least want to learn something from it, and I have made a practice of taking this approach, and it has meant that I spend less time being mad at bad art for wasting my time and money, because that really is unproductive. That does nothing for you. It just leaves you mad.
Yeah, totally. And unless you're someone who finds pure rage generative, it's probably not going to leave you in a place to make work.
Yeah.
I'm wondering as well, because like you have so much experience editing, and editing is this delicate art that's a mix between, well, particularly when you're at somewhere like Slate or, a media company, you're trying to help the piece become the best version of itself. And you also have the needs of the institution you're working for, right? It also has to fit what Slate wants to do, right? So it might be that I turn something in where the best version of it is like a fragmented, lyrical essay that's doing these. And it's like, well, that's not what Slate needs to do. So you have to kind of balance all of these things. And I'm wondering how you navigated that tension between, the work of great writing and how to make it better in front of you and the needs of Slate. And if there's anything we can learn from your editing experience to how we think about learning from bad art.
The thing that stands out to me from your question is the gatekeeping function of an editor. People are forever complaining about gatekeeping, and obviously it can serve to maintain the status quo in a negative way, but it is a really important part of being an editor or curator or producer.
Yes, gatekeeping is both necessary and good is the thing that, is hard to admit, but it's like there's bad gatekeeping out there, but the actual act of gatekeeping is important.
Important and necessary indeed. And when you're making an initial decision about taking a piece, for example, for somewhere like Slate, yes, the first question is this a good idea? Does the argument make sense? Is it interesting? Is it fresh? But if you are an editor at a magazine, you are being paid to help that magazine succeed. And part of that, in a weird way, is protecting the magazine. You cannot publish crap, because people see crap, they will not come back to this magazine to look for more crap. Like every decision you take is potentially hurting the publication. And that's maybe a big thing to put on your shoulders, but it's necessary. It isn't about whether you agree with the idea or whether you like the writer. It's about what works and what works for this outlet. Mm-hmm. And, that might seem a bit off topic in a way, but we do set our expectations based on where something is appearing. The bad show that I saw that kind of generated this episode was on the free fringe. There is no charge going in. You are just asked to make a donation when you leave. If you go to a show like that, you expect some curation, but the bar is infinitesimally lower than, say, an Edinburgh International Festival show in the Usher Hall. And you have to treat those things differently. Just as, say, a piece in the New York Times should be judged more harshly than a tweet from a dude with 2 followers, right?
Absolutely. And then there's, of course, the second thing that we were talking about, which is execution problems. Yeah. I am wondering a bit about that show at the Fringe. I'm not asking you to out who it was. And, I know that we have to maybe be a little cagey about details. But what was it that was off about the execution for you? When you had to answer that question, how would I do it better? What did you come up with?
That's a really perceptive question, because the first thing that struck me about this show was that it was in the wrong genre. It was supposed to be a comedy show, and it was set up as a comedy show, and there was a comedy-related word in the title. And in the show, there was a line where the performer said something like, "I wrote all these jokes the week after X happened." And I thought, sweetie, you didn't. You didn't write a single joke. And the fact that you think you did worries me, because now I wonder if you would even recognize a joke if one ran onto the stage and grabbed the microphone from you. That was very, it was a cause for concern, let us say. But the topic of the show was wrestling with big feelings, a situation that a lot of people struggle with. And if the performer had shared their experience with these feelings and told just a story from their life, not as jokes, so-called, but as reflections, as insight, I actually think it might have been moving and helpful. They were a trained performer. They did have certain skills of, making an audience feel comfortable. They were not hopeless. the show just wasn't the right genre. It also needed an editor. I cannot believe that they had had any dramaturgical work done on the script. I mean, it came from their heart, and I appreciated that, but it wasn't a show, you know? It needed structure, it needed polishing, it needed any feedback whatsoever. And I also think, and this is a little bit specific perhaps, that there was a structural problem with it being a festival show. At the Fringe, almost everything is about an hour. Admittedly, some shows are maybe 1.5 hours, but they're very rarely less than an hour. And this person had the performance space for an hour, but they did not have an hour's worth of material. And, you know, it kind of makes sense. This particular festival where there are visitors running around town trying to see as many shows as possible, you need to have a predictable length show. People probably wouldn't go out of their way to go to a venue for 20 minutes. So, you know, it was just a mismatch. The performer did not have anything like an hour's worth of material, but they had to fill an hour, and there was nothing that could be done about that. So those are three things, two of which were definitely addressable. The third, well, it was addressable, but it was, you know, right in the very...
in the fundament of the... Yeah. You know, it's interesting when Anne and I go and see movies or plays or whatever, part of the joy of our relationship is taking them apart on the subway ride home and being like, okay, what worked, what didn't work, what would make this better, what is it trying to do? You know, it's fun to have a partner to do that sort of stuff with if you go to see things. Like I remember we went to go see the movie Joyride, right? It's like a girls' trip, hangover, all Asian kind of cast thing.
Yes.
And it was really fun. We wanted to see a raunchy summer comedy. We were really in the mood for it. It really hit that spot. But we were like, what would have made it better? What could have made it better? And what we realized actually in looking through the film is it's a comedy. There's almost no what you would formally call jokes in it. There's almost no thing where there is a setup and a punchline, or someone says something witty in response to a situation that is humorous. It's actually all antics and plot.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting to think about that, about like, well, where are the jokes? Can you do a comedy that doesn't have jokes, you know? And that leads to some interesting thoughts about comedy. So I also think that another thing that's helpful for this process is to drag a friend to the crap with you and have them help you break it down.
Oh, so true, so true.
Well, when we come back, we'll talk about a different kind of crap. Successful crap.
Apple Card is the perfect credit card for every purchase. It has cashback rewards unlike others. You earn unlimited daily cashback on every purchase, receive it daily, and can grow it at 4.15% annual percentage yield when you open a high-yield savings account. Apply for Apple Card in the Wallet app on iPhone and start earning and growing your daily cash with savings today. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings is available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility requirements. Savings accounts provided by Goldman Sachs Bank USA. Member FDIC. Terms apply. Labour strikes, climate change, your crappy office printer. What do they have in common? Come on, it's all about the money. Economics is everywhere and everything, fueling our lives, even when we least expect it. If you're a fan of working and are curious to learn something new and exciting about economics every week, check out the Planet Money podcast from NPR. Planet Money is a different kind of world where the complex economy actually makes sense, where human stories supersede abstract theories. Listeners can learn, laugh, and be entertained. It's econ down to earth. Planet Money answers some of life's burning questions. Will AI take over our jobs? Is fancy vodka just fancy marketing? And why are Christmas trees so darn expensive? The Planet Money team lives to tell a good story in around 30 minutes. It's econ for the rest of us. Tune in to Planet Money every week for entertaining stories and insights about how money shapes our world. Stories that can't be found anywhere else. Listen now to Planet Money from NPR, wherever you get your podcasts. Listeners, this is June again. I just want to remind you that if you are enjoying working overtime, we would love for you to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, we would very much appreciate your rating or reviewing the show. It really does help new listeners to find us. And if Overcast is your app of choice, as it is for me, please hit the star to recommend the episode to others.
All right, one final kind of crap we have to discuss here, June. Crap that is, at least externally, quite successful. Blockbuster movies, award-winning novels, the paintings of Ellsworth Kelly. There's always something that the culture has accepted that leaves us cold, right? That's part of having your own taste,
Yes.
is there's going to be stuff that people aligned with you love that you don't. And I had an experience once, this is like 15 years ago, that was really instrumental in my feelings about this. Anne, at the time, was working in Broadway marketing. And so we would often have to go see her clients' shows. And they were often not very good. And I remember one time we had comps to Les Mis, which I had seen more than once before, loved it as a kid, don't love it as an adult. And I actually ran into a friend who writes musicals. He had a hit Broadway show and stuff like that. And I was like, he's like, oh, hey, what are you up to tonight? I was like, man, I have to fucking go see Les Mis. Can you believe it? I have to go see Les Mis. It's such cheap crap. And he said, you can really learn a lot from something that is really successful that you don't like. If you just ask, why on a craft level is this successful? And I really took that to heart. You're not asking, as some critics do, what's wrong with the audience that this is successful, right? Because that's an important question. That's totally fine, but that's separate from our purposes. What you're asking is, what is it actually doing well that's causing it to connect to people? And you know what?
Yeah.
I had a great time at Les Mis. I kind of grew to respect it, and I kind of like Les Mis now as a result.
Well, you got to tell us, what is it about Les Mis that makes it popular?
Okay, I don't think this is the whole thing, but this is one thing that I realized on a craft level that it's doing, which is that nearly every song can be sung in a medley with nearly every other song in the show. And in fact, they often do. If you listen to that musical again, you will notice they're often bringing in verses and choruses from various other songs because the melodic motifs match up, the chord structures match up, they sort of interlock in this really pleasurable way, one day more and at the end of the day, and do you hear the people sing, you can do them all at the same time. And so the show is constantly reinforcing itself in your brain. You leave the show already knowing a great deal of the show and having it in your head. So it establishes this kind of beachhead in your brain, and then it just expands from there.
Wow. First of all, I love that. And it really makes me want to go and watch Les Mis to kind of hear it for myself. And it also has made me realize that that's kind of true for West Side Story, which I think is an absolutely brilliant piece of art. Maybe
totally.
My favorite musical. And it's not, most musicals have some kind of reprise. But that one, you're constantly getting it. It's constantly coming back. And it's really effective.
Yeah, and the orchestration is also constantly referencing it, and stuff like that. I mean, it's really clever.
Wow.
So I'm just wondering, have you ever had an experience like that where you decided, okay, everyone loves Titanic. I hate Titanic. What is it that Titanic does, or, whatever?
Yeah. So when it was my job to do what I could to make Slate's podcasts succeed, I really tried to study successful podcasts outside of our network, some of which I thought were junk. For example, there are true crime podcasts that are, in my view, objectively terrible. The hosts just read from Wikipedia, or worse, take information uncredited from writers who have spent a lot of time doing research and reporting. These hosts leave instructions to their off-mic producers in the final edit. I mean, it's just, oh God, but honestly, that almost seemed like the worst sin. They repeat themselves. They spend more time talking about themselves than they do the supposed topic of the episode. I mean, I could go on and on, obviously. Yeah. These shows often are massive, and sometimes the things you observe can be helpful. These shows are often really, really, really good at connecting with listeners and kind of building community. And they really let their audience know that they appreciate them and respect them. And that is important. And we don't always all do that. So I did learn from that. But then there were a few things that I couldn't help myself from noticing that more fall into what you described as kind of critiquing the audience.
Right.
And as a great fan of TV procedurals, I am familiar with the notion of comfort viewing, and I think comfort listening is just as popular, but it often involves leaving very complicated questions unexplored and treating complex situations as if they were really simple and straightforward. And that just, I don't know, it's dispiriting.
Yeah, I mean, part of what you learn from doing that is what you don't want to do, right? And so in that case, it's like, how do we connect with the audience the way that these folks connect with the audience, which they're really great at, and then avoid the other pitfall of it, which is making the world more simple than it really is.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
totally.
Amen.
We should probably also mention here that our Slate colleague, Carl Wilson, wrote the actual definitive book on the process of learning from successful crap, which is Let's Talk About Love, A Journey to the End of Taste, where he tries to make himself like Celine Dion and explore what it is that makes her an international star. And on the way, probes the very nature of taste itself.
Well, that book has been on my reading list forever. I'm going to move it to the top of my TBR pile when we hang up from this call. Yeah, I still haven't read it, but I have never heard a discouraging word about it.
I taught it. That was how I first read it, because I find when I teach, I want to assign like one thing where we're discovering it together. That's always very pleasurable. And so that was the one, because I had always meant to read it. And I was just like, every time in class, I was like, part of me doesn't know what to say here because it's just like so fucking good. It's such a great book. That's all the time we have for this week's episode, but let me leave you with one last piece of advice. I think you should subscribe to Working wherever you get your podcasts. I mean, come on, we are awesome. And if you have ideas for things that we could do better or questions you'd like us to address, we would love to hear from you. You can send us an email or a voice memo to working@slate.com or give us a ring at 304-933-WORK.
And if you would like to support the work that we do, sign up for Slate Plus at slate.com/working plus. You'll get bonus content, including exclusive episodes of Decoder Ring and Big Mood, Little Mood, and you'll be supporting what we do right here on Working.
Thank you, as always, to Working Overtime's producer, Kevin Bendis, and to our series producer, Cameron Drews. These two gentlemen ensure that nothing we do winds up being crap. We'll be back on Sunday with a brand new episode of Working, and in 2 weeks, we'll have another Working Overtime. Until then, get back to work.
Hey everybody, it's Tim Heidecker. You know me, Tim and Eric, Bridesmaids, and Fantastic Four. I'd like to personally invite you to listen to Office Hours Live with me and my co-hosts, DJ Doug Pound.
Hello.
And Vic Berger.
Howdy.
Every week we bring you laughs, fun, games, and lots of other surprises. It's live. We take your Zoom calls.
Music.
We love having fun. Excuse me?
Songs.
Vic said something.
Music.
Songs.
Music.
I like having fun. I like to laugh. I like to meet people who can make me laugh. Please subscribe now.